I grew up playing sports, and I wasn't necessarily the best natural athlete, but I always had a ton of fun doing it. Spent most of my time with people who were athletes, who were playing sports, and a lot of my influence in my early years were from coaches. So playing football became like an essential and integral part of who I was becoming. I loved it so much. I loved the sport. It was a connection with me and my father, who loved football. My sister Jacqueline is 9 years older than me, and we're products of separate marriages, but we operate just as if we had the same mom and dad. My sister was always the much smarter version, and I kind of make that joke that I ended up okay, but right now I'm enjoying what I am doing, creating content, being silly, being fun. Becoming me is more so I am foundationally developing who I am, and where that leads me I don't know. But hopefully it's as high as I possibly can, because I never want to let down the people who sacrificed for me, my parents and my family. So I don't know where that ends up. It's a hard question for me to answer, but all I know is
Hi, Zan. Welcome to Becoming You. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Hi, Katrina. Very nice to see you. It's been a minute.
I know, seriously, from our days in Jersey, Bergen County.
Yeah.
It's funny how I met your family originally too, just working in a retail store, and you guys were my customers at the time, and we've all just kind of stayed in touch over the years, in different capacities. So it's funny how life works out like that.
Who knew the conversation about whether to get an iPhone or an Android would lead to this?
I know. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, absolutely. And your dad's always come in clutch for me, being an attorney and a judge in the past, and your mom in real estate. So you just come from such a high performing, high achieving family. And it's great. I mean, that kind of comes with the territory, I think, where we grew up, which sets different expectations, I think, on the kids that are the next generation coming up. And I'm excited to kind of hear what that looked like for you. And I know you have a sister too. So what was that like growing up? How did that set the standard for you in life?
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, my dad went to Duke, and so I was never pressured to go to Duke. We tried to get me into Duke. We couldn't get me into Duke. But, definitely a focus on education in my family, a focus on doing your best. My sister was always the much smarter version. And I kind of make that joke now still that I ended up okay, but she was always the one who wanted to read, and she would lock herself in her room reading, and my parents would try to force me to read, and I just wanted none of it. So it was one of those things where maybe it wasn't as natural to me, where maybe I kind of had to work at school, and my sister Jacqueline was a lot more, school came easy to her. And my parents are obviously pretty smart people too. So it was definitely a focus on, doing your best in school. And I had some weekends of social events taken away from me for not performing at the highest level, or maybe slacking off, which definitely set the stage for later in life for me. But yeah, I mean, my parents definitely set it up for me to really focus on just doing my best, not necessarily results driven, but more so just effort driven.
Effort, yeah, and merit too. And I know in high school, a lot of your time was focused on playing football and being really successful in that space. And that kind of transpired to you getting into a D3 school, right? And you played at the college level too. So I'm curious, how did that fit in with this drive to try to succeed in school separately?
Yeah, I think, I grew up playing sports, and it was something that really, I wasn't necessarily the best natural athlete, but I always had a ton of fun doing it, and it introduced me to social circles I don't think I would have had otherwise. And so there was a bit of a camaraderie thing that sports in general brought me. And so as I got into high school, football became more of a focus. And this is after my family had moved to Hawaii for 2 years and then moved back. So during that 2 year span, we lived a bit off the beaten path, and sports wasn't really a part of my life other than recess. And so I kind of lost that engagement with organized sports until I came back to New Jersey, and luckily found football pretty quickly after. And getting into high school, football kind of formulated my social circle and who I was as a person. It was kind of I spent most of my time with people who were athletes, who were playing sports, multiple sports, and a lot of my influence in my early years were from coaches. And so playing football became like an essential and integral part of who I was becoming. And, I didn't want to let go of it because I loved it so much. I loved the sport. It was a connection with me and my father, who like loved football, huge Miami Dolphins fans.
Mhm.
And like I grew up my whole like childhood watching the Dolphins. And so, football, I connected with it so well because of the support I got from my parents, the people I'd met through it. And I had the decision at the end of high school about whether to continue or not. And it was pretty much adamant in my head that I would play football, just where. And
Mhm.
so I had the opportunity to play at Fordham and play Division I football, but I was going to long snap, which if you don't know football well, you wouldn't know what a long snapper is. But it's basically a guy who probably gets anywhere between 5 and 10 plays on a good day, on a good Saturday. And it's just throwing the football through his legs. And then on some plays, like a punt, would run down and try to make a tackle. And on
Right.
field goals, would literally do nothing but stand there and throw his arms out and block. Doesn't sound like football to me. Well,
Yeah.
I was good at it, obviously good enough at a very conservative 5'9.5". It was going to allow me to play Division I sports, but it wasn't like football the way I wanted it. So I went the Division III route, and I had a handful of schools that I could have played at, and I ended up at Salve Regina University in Newport, and it was the best 4 years I could have imagined. Even at a lower level at Division III, I think it gave me the balance of life that I really didn't necessarily know that I needed, but I definitely needed, because if I was a Division I athlete, I wouldn't have quenched the thirst for other things academically and socially at the Division I level. It wouldn't have allowed me to expand who I am as a person and
Mhm.
be well rounded. So the Division III route was exactly what I needed. I just didn't know it.
Right. That's so awesome. And thank you for walking me through that. I wasn't aware of the nuances of that journey. Even when you mentioned living in Hawaii, I'm like, wow, I didn't know that part either. So this is great to hear.
Yeah.
And you make a really good point just about balancing these choices that we have in life. Almost every step of the way, we have options to go, right or left, and they tend to come with pros and cons. So D1 might sound really nice and have a good reputation, and Fordham's a great school, but what does that mean for your social life and your development as a person and even playtime on the field versus if you went the D3 route, maybe that was a more holistic journey for you. And it sounds like it panned out.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I can't say that I was necessarily the most focused person getting into college. I was, the classic college kid, like baggy gray sweatpants, big sweatshirt, backwards upside down visor, basically doing everything to draw, undue college type attention to myself.
Right.
Wasn't as focused on school, but definitely knew I needed to do well, because at this point I'm getting to the end of the education route and I need to
Mhm.
like figure it out.
Yeah.
And my sophomore year, um, I was getting agitated with the campus activities board and the talent they were bringing on for school concerts, and I just saw it as such like a missed opportunity to like highlight the school that we had. And I really liked the school, especially like within the first couple of years. I really leaned into it. So me and a friend ended up putting on suits and getting elected to the student government board, and that's where I kind of got more serious in college, mostly because of my environment, right? Because I'm spending more time with administrators and people who were more serious about school than I was my freshman year.
Mhm.
And so it was something I didn't expect to get involved in or have the time to. But had I gone to a school where I was playing Division I football, it wouldn't have even have been something I considered.
Right.
And so getting into student government then led into a bunch of other things, being involved on campus, where I was the president of the Student Athlete Advisory Committee for athletes on campus. And then I ended up running for president of student government. So I leaned into a lot of different areas that like typical athletes wouldn't do.
Mhm.
But it was just because I guess I was pissed off about one thing, and it led into like all of this other stuff that I ended up
Mhm.
doing. And I just became very active. By the time I was a senior, I felt like I had no time because I had filled my plate with a bunch of stuff, but it painted my resume really well. And then it allowed me the opportunity to get into New York City finance, which I don't think I would have had the opportunity to had I not been so active on campus. I think if I
Right.
just said I was a football player from a small school nobody heard of in Salve, at Salve in Newport, Rhode Island, I wouldn't have had the opportunity for my professional career because I wasn't as active or took advantage of the opportunity.
Right. Wow. And that's so amazing. And I definitely want to hear if finance was always on your radar. But before we dive into that, I know your parents have always been really proud of you and your sister Jacqueline throughout life. And it sounds like you just continue to impress throughout college too by, having this one maybe triggering event, and then it opened up all these different opportunities for you. What were your sibling dynamics like, and how did that play a role in your development, in those earlier years of life?
Yeah, so my sister Jacqueline is 9 years older than me, and um, we're products of separate marriages, but we operate just like as if we had the same mom and dad. I mean, my dad adopted her. My parents got married, and she became his daughter, and as if there was never any difference, right? And so, me and my sister, we clashed at times, but we were like certainly close, and we got much closer the older we got. So when she was out of college, she moved home. So my sister, she ended up, going to rehab at some point while I was in college. She got into drugs, and we're blessed that she ended up, recovering, and she never relapsed, and she's been on this really high trajectory of improving her life. And sometimes I make the joke that I have to have this huge downfall and then a big comeback story to get back into first place, because my sister truly is back in first place. And I think we don't really see it as like a real competition because we share the same love for my parents. My parents are like the most supporting people I've seen them do basically everything to sacrifice for the both of us, and they've always encouraged us and led with love. And so even when we make like mistakes in life, they've always been there. They've never turned their back. And so me and my sister get along so well. Even now, more so than we did as kids, even though we were getting along well and we had a good relationship. I think our bond is tightened because of the things we've gone through together, and the way we've seen each other grow. And so she's a motivating factor for me because I've seen her triumph over a really hard, a hard time in her life. So I think it's one of those things where our family has grown closer and closer together the harder the things have gotten and the more we've had to overcome together. And so I think that struggle has created like very concrete bonds where I know I'll always have my sister, and it'll only get stronger the more we go. And my parents have established that. I think it really started ground up from how my parents raised us, the way they treated us as kids, the pressure they put on us at times to be our best version of ourselves. But then the way they treated us when we weren't our best version, the way they cared for us, and led us through like the difficult times. So I think my sister and I have such a strong dynamic because they've established that for us.
That's really amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that. As long as I've known your family, I never even realized what you just shared, that you and your sister, come from different parents essentially, or, however it plays out, it doesn't even really
Mhm.
matter. I think it speaks to the fact that your parents do love both of you, equally and unconditionally. And that is only ever what came across, that you are always this like unified front, and just, a close knit family, as close as you could be, as we're all human, we all, have different dynamics. Like you said, you didn't maybe always get along, but it's great to see how that's transpired over time. And the example that she's setting for you of just overcoming her own battles sounds like it's also helped you kind of fight through and grow, to the best of your ability just by seeing your sister's example. So how do you see that kind of helping on your own journey of becoming yourself?
So I see it in multiple ways, but I think the overarching perspective is that I have so many amazing people in my life that I never want them to be disappointed by me not missing my potential, right? And so I always think of it as there's a bar above me that I haven't reached yet, and I have so much love and people who support me in the things that I want to do and pursue. And nobody ever confines me to a box or tells me I have to do this. If anything, my dad chased me away from law, and he would make the joke that when I'm arguing with him, he's like, "You want to go to law school? That was bad. You don't want to go to law school." And so I was always kind of given the open architecture to have the life that I want, what I envision for myself,
Hmm.
but always like the constant support that kind of doesn't make me feel any bit of negative pressure, but more so like positive encouragement to just continue to strive. And, you know, I see it in that my parents sacrificed so much for us. My mom was a single mom with my sister, working multiple jobs at a time. And so I watched, I've, you know, the stories I've heard over the years gives me so much, you know, like, I guess, admiration for my mom and the way she handled herself and being a young mother with my sister. And then watching my parents, you know, kind of grow together and establish the family we have. And I only want the same for myself, right? If I could have half of what I did as a kid for my kids one day, that would be like an amazing accomplishment. So when I picture my life, you know, right now I'm in my late 20s. How do I picture the rest of my life going? You know, double my age right now. Where do I sit? I think, you know, having a family and having had a successful career and raised children in the same way that I was raised is really my end goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I envision like me and my sister investing in properties together, right? And like growing business relationships and continuing to develop relationships in general. And then using that to foster like a really fruitful career and then a fruitful life for my family and making sure they have everything they need, because that's what I had growing up, and I'm fortunate for that.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And I just love hearing siblings that do kind of go into business together or motivate each other in the future. And like you said, share properties or whatever it is, because there's just something more fulfilling about that, I think, than trying to strike out only on your own and having this, you know, second home, but it's empty half the year or something like that. So to be able to share it with a
Yeah,
sibling, I think that's great. And it is motivating, even just from the perspective of developing their life too into the future too, because when you can envision your future, it's a lot, and romance it. I heard this recently, like we should be romancing our future a lot more than we're romancing our past, and sometimes we nurse the wounds of the past so much to the point where we're missing out on the future. We're not building towards it. We can't even imagine what it could look like. So it sounds like, you know, everything that your parents have been able to share with you, I see you actually sharing with the world with your network right now through the reels that you make, the content that you put out. To me, I find it very inspiring as well. The way that you're kind of describing how your parents and your sister inspired you, I see you kind of being that inspiring light to a lot of us out in the world today. There was something that you had put out where you were talking about work-life balance and how there's no such thing as balance, you know, if you have these priorities in life. So I kind of want to shift that to work-life priorities, you know, and I know you're doing a lot in both of those spaces. So how are you either striking a balance? Why do you not call it a balance? And how do you prioritize what matters to you in life right now?
yeah. Well, so first off, back to what you said, I just want to say, like, I, the football thing has turned me into a team guy where I treat everything in my life that same way. And I
Mm-hmm.
almost like envision myself as like a general manager of my own team.
I
And
love
like the
that.
people that I allow onto my team are people that like I value so at such a core level that like I know exactly who they are as a person, the reason why I want them on my team. They're recruited, right? Like that's my
Yeah.
circle. And like I chose them very like very instinctually, right? Like I understood who they were as a person. That's the person I want to keep around, right? And so I think for me, like my life is about having fun and enjoyment and like doing the things I'm passionate about. A reason why like I maybe spread myself too thin at times, which is my version of balance. And I think everybody has their own version. And I have friends who are really focused on one thing, and they lock into that one thing, and it's a beautiful thing. I think that's exactly what you should do if that's exactly what makes you happy, right? If you're passionate about something to a degree that going all in on that one thing makes you happy and gives you that inspiration that like you're going to have a successful and happy and fruitful life, then that's what you should do. But I think people also romanticize balance and like, oh, like I can go have this drink here and then like, you know, I'll go out on a Thursday night, and maybe that defeats the purpose of what their work is and like something they are actually passionate about. So they allow balance to be a distraction. And so when I put that out, it was more so to, you know, obviously putting out content. Sometimes you have to be a little bit, uh, you have to
Edgy.
draw somebody, right? Like you have, I'm looking for the word, but I'm losing it. You have to be somewhat charging and like one-sided. And so what I said was, you either have to pick balance or being your best, but you can't have both.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes your version of balance creates your best, right? Because if I didn't have the fitness side of my life, I would be no good at my normal 10, like I don't know, 10 to 12-hour job, right? And I spend so much time there because it's important to me. There's things that I'm trying to grow, and I know that it's an important aspect of my life, and I'm passionate about. So I'm not looking for a way out, right? I'm looking for more ways in. And so I think my buy-in, it allows me to increase my growth because I know that that's how I want to spend my time and dedicate who I am as a person to growing something I've become passionate about. Because when you leave college, you don't know necessarily if that first job, that second job, that third job is going to be your career. And I'm fortunate enough that I started off within the vessel that I'm still trying to grow in and that I see myself long-term being in. But if I only did that, I would not be sane, and I would probably become stale, and I would probably like detest it, and I would probably walk away from it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because I've leaned into bodybuilding and fitness and doing social media content, and traveling and doing things that are fun for me and I'm passionate about, it allows me to then put more of my energy back into my main function. And so I think everybody has to create their own definition of what balance is. And if you can't do that, you don't have orientation. You don't truly know what's integral to you. And I'm very clear. I've gained clarity over the last couple of years of what are the things that make me me, what makes me
Mm-hmm.
happy. And if I don't have the combination, I don't have Zan, right? I lose Zan. And so that's why I put out that piece, because I wanted to stoke, obviously being, a bit of a little bit one-sided about it, and like telling you you can't have balance if you want to be your best. But I wanted to stoke that thought for people, that like, what is it that is important to me? How do I want to balance my life? What does balance mean to me? And what is exactly I'm trying to achieve? So, I try to put out pieces of content that inspire somebody's thought, not necessarily like I'm being provocative, right? That's the word I was looking for. I'm being provocative in a way that's provoking somebody's thought, and it might piss them off, and I'm
Right.
totally okay with that, because
Right.
if I piss 20 people off, but I gave 200 people any bit of a thought and said, maybe I am too balanced. Maybe I like something, and I'm very motivated by something, but I get distracted by things that aren't worth my time or my
Mhm.
energy, or they detract from the thing I'm truly after. I wanted somebody to think about that, because that might change their orientation, their
Mhm.
direction in life.
Right. And sometimes these statements are really the best, the ones that make us feel uncomfortable. It's bringing something into question within ourselves. So when you said that statement, and maybe it triggered a lot of different people for different reasons, I think it's great because a conversation comes from it. And it was a sticky phrase. And I remembered the concept of it. And you just remembered the exact phrasing right now. And I think that that does go such a long way. In just in helping people think about themselves, and who they are. And you mentioned that you've been able to find clarity in yourself over the last few years. Was there something specific that you did to, kind of pull back these layers and get to know yourself better and find your values more effectively that maybe would help the audience?
Yeah, I think I had to find value in going through tough times. Uh, Obviously, we talked a little bit about my skin issue.
Hmm.
I broke out an awful cystic acne that forced me to take the Accutane route. And for 5 months, I was on Accutane, purging my skin. And that was as a result of going on testosterone replacement therapy, which I medically needed. I went to an endocrinologist, had my testosterone checked. I was super low. It was as a result of dieting. And the reason I was dieting is because as a kid, I was overweight. When I moved to Hawaii, I broke my arm. I broke my arm and stopped being active. Couldn't participate at the only sports and exercise oriented thing I did during the day was recess, right? So I stopped running, but I kept eating. And I got fat as a kid. It became something I was teased and bullied about as a kid. So I leaned into the weight room when football came around in my life, and I leaned into that side of playing organized sports, fitness. And so then when I got into fitness, I started dieting, right? Because they go hand in hand, exercise and nutrition. I over dieted. I had a coach. It was online. I was misdirected, and then this is all during COVID. My bodybuilding prep that I was doing ended in a show that didn't happen because of the pandemic. And so then, I started binge eating. Then I screwed up my hormones. So then I can't get them back because I've already tanked all of my hormones, and so I go on testosterone replacement therapy. And at this point, I've already turned myself not natural, right? So I started my first cycle, what they call it, with just testosterone, but I 4x the dose, right? 100 to 400. My skin got overwhelmed. My skin blew up in cystic acne. It was entirely painful, and it took me away from being in the gym. I would go to the gym every day, but I would wear 2, 3 shirts and a sweatshirt over it. And I couldn't put my back against a pad, and I couldn't press against anything. Couldn't put a barbell on my back.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all the things that gave me relief. They were an outlet to stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I couldn't have that, it compounded stress. And so I went through a really tough, dark time in my life for about 4 months, where I was working from home. I had very little social interaction other than the gym, but the gym became a really tough time for me during the day. But I couldn't lose it, so I would just keep going. I would just keep going, and I didn't want social interaction. I would avoid people. I would keep a hood on, so I had it on my neck. I didn't want people to see that. So in the first time in my life, other than being overweight, I'm now embarrassed of my appearance. I've lost the thing that truly gives me an outlet for my stress, and I wasn't able to exert myself in the same way. And so, going on Accutane, which usually has a bit of a negative effect on the mental psyche, and people have the side effects of having a bit of depression. I was actually becoming better because I was coming out of depression, because I was so depressed because I lost my physical activity, the thing that gave me so much life. And so going on Accutane repaired my skin, and I shared that on social media, and it gave me a lot of really harsh feedback. I got roasted on a YouTube video that I put out on April 1st. So April Fools, but only for me. Everybody's roasting me. And I was being vulnerable about it just to save somebody from making the same mistake.
Right.
Because I would not have, at that point in time, I would not have made that mistake if somebody had told me what was about to happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Because if I had not had that experience, I wouldn't have felt what it would feel like to lose something you're so passionate about, to be so vulnerable, and to be ruthlessly ridiculed for it.
Mm-hmm.
And what that did for me in result is now a couple of years later, almost to the day, I quite literally could take any bit of criticism. I'm the most self-deprecating person in the world. I will make fun of myself all day long and twice on Sundays. I truly don't care what anybody says about me. I will put any bit of content out on social media and basically not think twice about it. Anybody can sit in my comment section or in my direct messages, and they could tear me apart. The only thing they can't do is say anything about my family, and that is the only thing that will get me back at them. That is the only thing that will ever get any bit of an actual angry response.
Right.
And so I think going through all of that changed me as a person in such a positive way through such a negative route, that is truly what morphed me into the human I am today. Yeah. It was the pivot in my life that I needed. I didn't know I needed. And if you asked me a year ago, I would have said, I wish I could take it all back. I don't want to take a single second of it back, because if I lost that, I would lose a piece of the person I became. And so that's where I gained my clarity. I know what it is that I'm here for. I'm here to provide for my family, eventually. And I'm here to take care of my parents, who gave me such a beautiful life and took care of me through the hardest times. But I'm also here to inspire people. I'm here to help people through their tough times, right? And give them any bit of a thought that might change them, that might give them encouragement. And I'm also here to do my job at a really high level. I want to be my end goal is to be the best financial advisor I can be. And I'm niching down to the fitness space because that is what I know. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very clear on that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm using these vessels of my life to get to this promised land I think of, where I've taken care of my family, I'm financially stable, and I'm truly happy, and I've made impact, because impact is truly what I'm after. I want impact on my family. I want impact on my financial comfort. I want impact on people at the scale the largest scale I can.
That's amazing. I'm just taking this all in, because it's such an emotional story that you just shared, and the way that you've been able to come out of it and find this silver lining and be able to share that with people going forward. And I think something that we can all relate to is, if people attack us and judge us, ridicule us, we feel some type of way, we take it personal. And just the fact that in a year you've been able to move past that. You're more like a duck where the water rolls off your back now, and it doesn't matter when people insult you. You can just like, you can do it back to yourself, or whatever it is. Basically,
Yeah.
there's nothing that they could throw at you, that you haven't already like thought about yourself. So it doesn't sound like it affects you in that same way anymore. And I think for so many people, it is really hard to put themselves out there and to be vulnerable in any capacity because they're afraid of being a target and being ridiculed. So I just think that that's really amazing that you've been able to move through that and grow in that way, because it's such a personal growth. Like we see physical growth right in the gym and athleticism and your life story from the outside. People can see it visually, but what you just shared is something that was a transformation internally. And I think a lot of us maybe want that type of transformation, but it's hard to just want to sign up for that too, because it takes so much torture almost, right? Like you said, these were kind of like the worst times of your life, and yet it brought about the best results. And a friend of mine, Anna, who was actually on this show, we talked about values. She asked me this week, do you ever feel like you're swimming upstream against our culture? And something that you had put on your story this week too, I feel like coincides with that, where you were talking about a rest day from the gym and how a lot of people, maybe they have their cheat days where they eat a ton of food or they rest at home and they don't go to the gym. And for you, it was like, I'm still going to go to the gym, even though it's my rest day, because this is where my mental health, flourishes. And even if I'm not working out, being in this environment is feeding that healthy habit that's so important to me in my life. And so I think that your approach to life and her question are speaking the same truth. And I'm curious, if I pose this question to you, how would you answer it? So do you, Zan, ever feel like you're swimming upstream against our culture?
All the time. All the time. I feel like I'm a constant contrarian,
Hmm.
like constantly debating the social norm.
Hmm.
Um, and, to the rest day thing, I think the reason why I posted that was I make a lot of friends in the gym and I'm focused on my workouts, but I really I crave social interaction. So I will talk to anybody in the gym. And so I end up becoming friends with everybody in the gym. And there's an older guy in there who is a doctor who I would have no other reason to talk to. We don't look the same. We don't train the same. We don't do any bit of the same stuff in the gym. But I ended up spotting him on a workout one time, and now we're friends. And he
Wow.
said to me that yesterday was a rest day, and he was like losing it, right? And he was like, he's been told he needs to take a rest day, and he stayed home, and it threw him off. And basically, what I had said to him is just because you're coming to the gym doesn't mean you need to kill your workout. Not every day you should be killing a workout. And honestly, if you're able to go to the gym 7 days a week and pretend like you're working hard, you're probably not working hard for most of the days otherwise, right? So, like the first 3 days should be really, really hard to the point where your body says, hey, stop working out. And if it doesn't feel that way, you're not working out that hard. And so, what I said to him was, come to the gym and sit in the sauna, come to the gym and stretch, come to the gym and do mobility work, walk on the treadmill, do the things you wouldn't do otherwise, because we all neglect mobility, we all neglect stretching, we all neglect recovery. And so if you are truly training hard the first couple of days of the week, your body should be asking for that, the recovery, the rest. And so take care of your body, but take care of your mental state by showing up to the place that is in rhythm, it's in routine, right? Keep that routine, because we're all habitual human beings, right? So the other thing is we create habits of how we act and how we talk to people, and our opinion, and how we either are self-aware or not self-aware, whether we're self-deprecating or not self-deprecating, or we are ridiculing people, right? And so I think that's where we become contrarian, where I become contrarian, and the reason why I feel like I'm swimming upstream is that I'm very opinionated, but I want everybody to do what the hell they want to do, right? I want everybody to be pursuing their passions, right? So like I'll get ridiculed for who I am on social media. I'll get ridiculed for how I treat my body or what I do with my life. And I think my contrast to that is that I think everybody should do whatever the hell it is that makes them happy.
Mhm.
And I think we have this culture of influence where everybody hops on a bandwagon and that's how they want to live their life. And it's people want to get into this cult routine almost of following something that's popular. And so I almost like try to follow exactly the opposite. try to do exactly what other people aren't doing, because it makes me feel different. It makes me feel like me. It's something that like it allows me a bit of liberty that like I'm basically separating away from the crowd. I don't love crowds. I like concerts. I like bars. I like restaurants. I like people. But I don't want to be a part of a crowd.
Yeah.
Right. I want to be my own like different version. And I think that's part of the swimming upstream that you mentioned, that everybody kind of wants to get into line, and I
Hmm.
want to be my own line.
Right. That's awesome. And do you find that you need extra motivation to do that, or is it something that comes naturally and you're not really having to expend energy thinking about the fact that you're doing things differently and a lot of people would disagree with what you're doing?
I don't think I have to manufacture any of my own like motivation or energy. I think it kind of comes inherent to who I am.
Hmm.
I think I'm a like super passionate person. I'm 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 typically pretty loose, but I can become very intense. And I'm passionate about like certain things, and so those things motivate me. Like I think motivation is fleeting. You create disciplines in your life, and then there's priorities and things that you get excited about. And like I'm a generally very excitable person, so like I don't need motivation. I'm just like I create like patterns, habits, and disciplines
Hmm.
about things that I really care about, people that I really care about, and like things that I'm pursuing. And so then it feels unnatural to not chase them.
Hmm.
Right, I almost just feel like I'm just constantly in my own pursuit of things that like drive me, make me happy. Being with the people that I really care about or like spending time with, they make me better. So I don't think I have to manufacture any bit of my own motivation, because motivation, it oscillates, right? It changes. There's like a rotation of priorities, and I think I just kind of constantly am in my own chase of whatever it is that is important and prioritized at that time. Like I did a bodybuilding show last July, and that was a triumph for me over my skin issues and who I was as a child and the way I felt about myself, and the ridicule I took as a kid. It was like, okay, well now I'm shredded and standing on a stage in my underwear in front of a bunch of people.
Right.
So there's really not much anybody can say about me being fat or having bad skin. I have now done that. That task is done. Check. Right. And then I move on and I go
Yeah.
on to the next thing. And I'm like, okay, well that kind of put my time and focus away from work, away from social events, and took me away from people. And so now rotate back to, all right, who is important in my life that I've neglected, right?
Hmm.
How much of my work can I optimize now and continue to drive into now that I don't have to spend 2 hours in the gym, right? Now I can dial it back by 50% and then add that 50% back to the rest of my life. So I think for me, it's just constantly trying to do the things I enjoy and find where my focus is at that phase of life, so that I can optimize that moment and have a good moment and then move on to the next one, and just continue to find that happiness out of it.
Hmm. And in that vein of chasing happiness and finding these priorities in life, as you envision yourself becoming in the future, what does that look like? And how do your short term goals today align with those long term plans? I know you shared you want to have a family and you want to grow in that aspect. I'm sure there's other areas of your life too, how you imagine yourself becoming in the future. You shared a little bit about your career. Is there anything else, and what are you doing today to kind of make that happen?
So I'm drinking a lot of energy drinks on TikTok because that's
Love
what's working right now.
that.
Um, Unsustainable, and not necessarily the most healthy thing. I want to live as long as I can. I want to do things that are fun. I want to make a lot of money. I want to help a lot of people. And so when I envision becoming me, right, in whatever that means, it means being healthy, happy, and successful, and being surrounded by the people that I love. And so the phase of life I'm in right now is growth, right? Grow everything that I'm doing. Fitness and bodybuilding will never end, but it will have like a different meaning to me, right? So like using bodybuilding as a way to get to that next level of my level of fitness, but also the fitness that I can experience, and the way I can use fitness to drive business, to drive relationships, to deepen those things in my life. I'll stop drinking energy drinks at some point. Maybe I'll just be like a tea and coffee guy. And I think that'll probably be better on my heart. But right now, like I'm enjoying what I am doing, creating content, being silly, being fun. Like I don't know if you watched much of my TikTok content. It's typically me like drinking an energy drink about this much and then putting it in the fridge later, and letting everybody think that I'm chugging this thing, listening to the most like erratic EDM music,
Right.
and fist bumping like a Jersey Shore cast member on my way to the office. And I think that's part of me like trying to be provocative and
Mhm.
creating a brand that
Mhm.
I'm not afraid to be myself. And like Wall Street Bodybuilder is kind of like this character I've created to become, that next level of the person I am, and more
Mhm.
so using it as a vessel, right? And so then becoming a lot more serious and buttoned up, and I don't necessarily have to have 3 buttons unbuttoned with my chain hanging out to get somebody's attention, but more so because I'm trying to show people that like you shouldn't be so afraid to be yourself and have some personality, even if you work
Mhm.
like a white collar job.
Right.
And so I'll put away the energy drinks at some point. The white collar job will become the main focus, and probably an 80% part of my life rather than like a 70% of my life, where that 10% will be gained from like the things I'm doing in my youth that I can still do, right? Like competing in bodybuilding, where I'll put that away at some point. And then family will start to take over, right? That next leg in life. So becoming me is more so like I am foundationally developing who I am, and where that leads me, I don't know. But hopefully it's as high as I possibly can, because I never want to let down, the people who sacrificed for me, my parents, my family, that like I didn't achieve my highest potential. So I don't know where that ends up. It's a hard question for me to answer, but all I know is I'm chasing it as hard as I can.
Yeah. And it's very evident. So great job, inspiring all of us and just staying true to that track that you're on, that you feel, intuitively is meant for you. I never even knew, like you had shared, that you were, a fat kid back in the day. And I think a lot of times we look at athletes and people that are in really good physical shape as just it comes naturally to them and it's easy for them, and I can't do it because that's just them. And you, along with like other coaches I've had, have just proven that that's really not the case. I mean, everything we want in life, if it's worth having, it's going to take hard work. And I'm just so grateful that you've shared your story here with us today. Is there anything else that's on your mind that we didn't cover that you would want to leave us, with that final thought?
I think what I always try to leave people with is just like a smile on their face, right? Like I want people when they leave me, I want them to feel good about our interaction, and I want them to feel better about themselves. I don't even want them to think about me. I want them to think better about themselves, and I think that's why the content I put out is more so to inspire somebody to, chase what it is that's important to them. So, in leaving this podcast, I almost want people to just be more introspective about themselves, like
Mhm.
understand themselves at a ground level, gain more clarity into their heart and into their brain about what it is that motivates them to be happy, to be better, the things that are important to them. So like it almost has nothing to do with me. It's more so about the person that I'm interacting with and the people that I'm speaking to. Is that I want them to feel better about themselves. I want them to like have higher energy. Something I hate when I hear is I ask somebody how they're doing and they say, "Oh, I'm tired." Like
Right.
that's a default. We're all tired.
Yeah.
Like whether it's because you didn't move at all today or you haven't stopped moving all day, we're all tired. How else are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Like, are you happy? Or like, what's going on today? And so, like, I ask those follow up questions because I want people to think about what it is that they're doing. Are they aligned? Are they happy? Are they motivated? Are they clear about who they are? And maybe they're not in the place they want to be, but maybe they're in that trajectory, right? Like they're leading in that way. So that's how I want people to be left from me, is more so having better and more positive clarity about themselves.
Amazing. So well said. Thank you so much, Zan, for being on the show. This was just so fruitful, and I can't wait to hear what everyone thinks of this episode.
Thank you, Katrina. It was awesome. I really, it was a pleasure, and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. You are my most important listener, and I can't thank you enough for spending your time with me. If this content resonates with you, then hit subscribe. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube by following @ConnectorQueen. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again on the next episode of Becoming You.